In a market increasingly saturated with derivative designs and uninspired homages, the Halcyon Journey stands apart. It's not a rehashed Submariner clone, nor does it borrow from other heritage brands with their name. Instead, it's a lesson in restraint, or at least an attempt to make something deliberate, even if it's not immediately eye-catching. But restraint has a price. At $659 to $819 on their website, currently the Halcyon Journey is asking for more than many would be willing to pay for what at first glance seems like a very simple watch. And that raises the same question in every review. Is it worth it? The biggest strength of the Halcyon Journey is that it exists as a counterpoint to the current wave of Chinese-built watches masquerading as heritage pieces. It doesn't lean on faux vintage cues or recycled case profiles from Rolex, Omega, or Patek. The 40mm case here is polished entirely and clean of being reminiscent of any other cases that might come to mind. It has a dial here that clearly emphasizes negative space, which is very similar to pocket watches that you used to see or could see over here in the corner. You see, the advantage to simplicity like this is it can be dressed up or dressed down. The execution is clean, confident, with no excess branding or unnecessary embellishments. That being said, there's no getting around the fact that this is a very simple offering for its price. The case is 316L stainless steel with competent but not extraordinary finishing. It's just polish finished and then heat blued or chemical blued hands. I didn't see a note which one they were. There's no elaborate brushing or grandiose chamfers. It's just a well-made watch that avoids ostentation. Now, some would call that elegance. Some would call it simplicity. For me, I think it helps place the emphasis on what matters most on a watch like this, and that is the dial. The truly standout feature of this watch is its porcelain dial, and that's where the conversation about value, or at least whether or not you're interested, gets a little more interesting. See, most watches at this price point rely on standard lacquer or enamel effects, but real fired porcelain dials are rare. You can still find them in less expensive Seikos. And when I say less expensive though, I still mean more than something like this. Now in person, the porcelain dial has a subtle depth and warmth that lacquer just can't replicate. It plays with the light in an organic way. The slight translucency that gives the watch a unique visual softness. Now, is it beautiful? I think so. But even more than that, it's interesting. The printing is crisp, the dial surface has a handcrafted quality, and the indices is where it really shines. See, now the version here features the traditional Chinese numerals, which is nice to see since this is a Hong Kong-based brand actually embracing a little bit Chinese heritage. The allure of them is unmistakable. See, they appear to be almost floating above the dial despite being simply painted. It isn't quite as entrancing as their hand-painted variants, which cost twice as much as this, which do feature some pretty cool artwork for the sake of being a little derivative though. Now, sure, it's a simple three-hander, but there's so many other watches that are also just three-handers. It comes down to feeling, aesthetics, but also what is powering this thing. Now, inside here, Halcyon uses the same SW200-1 or they offer a Miyota 9030. Now, both of these are automatic movements. Both of them are used in a lot of watches that I like. But what I really love about this is that they're willing to offer two variants that you get to pick which movement you would prefer. And I think more companies should do this if they can. Now, usually clearance issues as a result of the requirements of the movement itself or the rotor, or you have some sort of clearance issues with the cannon pinion dimensions. It usually forces a customer or a watch manufacturer to decide if they want this movement over that. But what's really nice about this is you can kind of let the customer decide, is it worth the extra $200 for a Swiss-made movement? Some people would say yes, some people would say no, and you kind of get to pick which one you feel. Now, the variant I'm showing here is the Sellita version because I love Sellita movements. They're functional, rugged, and often at a decent price. For the years of service you'll enjoy, the only downside is that it makes the watch a little thick at 11.8 millimeters thick. Now, it's a bit on the tubby side for a dress watch. That isn't uncommon in this price range, but it is a downside that you have to keep in mind. It has a semi-audible rotor, but creature comforts like an automatic movement do come at a price. So it just depends which one you care about, rotor or no rotor and having to wind it. The ghost date position on it isn't the best feature to have on a watch once you start getting near that $1,000 price range. And the last is just the fact that the crown is really small, and so it means it's sometimes difficult to operate, especially trying to set it Originally, and definitely if you're planning to hand wind it, it isn't the easiest crown to hand wind just because of how small it is in proportion to the case and how it sits in. Granted, it makes it more wearable and nicer when you're wearing it day to day. So is the watch worth it? Now, this is certainly a watch for those who appreciate simplicity and also demand originality. In an industry where microbrands flood the market with warmed over designs at lower prices, Halcyon's doing something genuine, but it comes at a bit of a cost. Now, the biggest problem with the Halcyon Journey is that it exists in a price range where competition is fierce. For the full original retail price of this Solita version at $1,099, you certainly can buy a Hamilton Intramatic, a Nomos Club Campus, or even if you want to dive watch a Seiko SPB 153. All of those watches have a stronger brand heritage, more recognizable design, but that's not kind of what they're offering here. Comparing to a Seiko at twice the price for a porcelain dial, the Halcyon Journey looks like it might be a reasonable value offering, especially at the discounted price that I see on their website today. Now, ultimately, this is a watch for a purist who values originality and subtlety. If you love the idea of small batch independent watch with a porcelain dial and an understated elegance, this could be worth considering. But if you're expecting technical excellence or unbeatable specs or deep brand history, your money is probably best spent elsewhere. So in the end, this is a watch that resists trends and embraces subtlety, but you really need to love the porcelain dial to justify the price. What do you guys think about the Halcyon Journey here? And what do you guys think about any other brands I should probably cover? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.